This is going to be a really good Snapchat story. So a couple of days ago, I received a few questions from you guys on Snapchat about why I rent my apartment. Most of you guys know here that I co-founded a company called Infinite Prosperity, which is a wealth creation education company. And I guess a few of my Snapchat followers thought it was a little bit hypocritical that I teach others about wealth, but I still rent an apartment. So a couple of days ago, I asked you guys if you want me to crunch the numbers and explain the exact reasons that I rent. And in 24 hours, we had 694 of you guys vote for the explanation. This is it. It's called How Not to Accidentally Enslave Yourself by listening to people who have no results and no idea. This Snapchat mini lesson has 6 chapters. And I got to make a few announcements first. Firstly, this is not financial advice. I have no idea what your situation is. Secondly, I apologize for swearing, and I apologize for going off on huge big tangents. I did say the other day that it was probably going to go for 3 minutes. It'll probably go for a lot longer than 3 minutes. Firstly, let's start with a challenge. I challenge you to find someone who's just bought a house or is just about to buy a house to move into, to live in there. Ask them why. What you'll find is a lot of them don't really have a clue. They sort of just think that it's just this kind of thing that's a good thing to do. It's better than renting. Some of them will say something like, I want to get into the property market, property doubles every 7 to 10 years, and I want to be there to capitalize on that growth. Which, in my opinion, is a much stronger reasoning than just doing it because you heard it's the right thing to do. Usually the people in the first group, the group who are doing it because they heard it's the right thing to do, pick these ideas up from their parents because there's a societal stigma attached to renting. Rent money is dead money. That's what, but it's a really common buzz phrase floating around society. Anytime you hear someone who says rent money is dead money, ask them what the alternative is. Invariably, what they're going to tell you is to buy a house with a mortgage, where they'll be paying principal plus interest. If rent money is indeed dead money, then what the hell do you think interest on a mortgage is? The non-tax deductible interest you pay on a mortgage for a home that you live in is pure bank profit. Profit that they've generated from giving you a loan, which is essentially money that didn't even really exist in the first place. They printed it out of thin air. And if you think that sounds crazy, that's because it is. And I encourage you to look up how fractional reserve banking works. Look at this video on YouTube. Not only is the interest you pay on a mortgage dead money, it's actually quantitatively more dead money than you usually pay when you just rent. If you want to see that for yourself, just look up like a median property price index, pick a suburb, look at what the houses are selling for and what they're renting for. Then just figure out what the interest rate is at the moment. These are varying from low 4s to high 5s. We'll call it 5%. 5% on $1 million divided by 52 is $961 a week, compared to rent, which is $750. I'm using my suburb, by the way, because I'm familiar with it. The median rent price is $750, and the median house price, the interest on the mortgage, will be $961. The principal on top of that will be another $275 a week, a total of $1,236. And that ratio of principal to interest will change throughout the course of the loan. But for the time being, at the start, we're talking $1,236 versus $750, same place, same suburb. Depending on the place you choose, you may also be subject to things like body corp, building insurance, land tax. The running costs really skyrocket. This stays put. Not to mention that over the course of the loan term, you're nearly going to be paying for the whole house again, just in interest. The third way to get a house is to buy it with cash. But every million you have tied up in your house is $1 million you can't invest elsewhere. If you can do 10% per annum on $1 million, that's $100,000 a year, or roughly $2,000 a week. $2,000 a week, $1,236 with a mortgage, or $750 rent. Same place, same value, same suburb. There is 3 ways to get a house. You can rent it, you can buy it with a mortgage, or you can buy it with cash. You could also live under a bridge, which isn't really an option, or you could live with your parents, which I encourage everyone to do for as long as practically possible. But for all intensive purposes, there's 3 main ways to have a house, and each one has a cost associated with it. If you buy it cash, you're missing out on a lot of potential returns. If you buy it with a mortgage, you've got all these running costs, and if you buy it with rent, you have dead money. This is what I call the cost of living. It costs to live in a place. If you don't want to live under a bridge, it's going to freaking cost them money. I encourage people not to get too caught up with rent money is dead money. The interest is dead money. The missed returns is dead money. There's dead money on all three models. Jesus, this is a long Snapchat. I promise the next 5 chapters will go much faster. Chapter 2, mortgages. This, buying with a mortgage, is the one that your parents want you to do, your friends want you to do, your teacher wants you to do, the society wants you to do. This is the popular one. If you are going to go down that route, at least crunch the numbers, know what a mortgage is, know what you're getting yourself into. No one does this stuff. The Latin origin of the word mort is death. We've heard of mortal, mortuary, etc. Gage is a pledge. A mortgage is a death pledge. It literally translates to a pledge till death. The second thing you'll need to know about your death pledge is that you'll pay it off like this. That's your debt, that's when it ends, that's how you'll pay it off. This is 30 years, and you're the average person who sells and moves on in 8.3. Understand that after 8.3 years, you'll have paid off around about fuck all. This is called amortization, and if you sell and then move to a bigger house with a bigger mortgage, the process starts again. People do this 3 to 4 times on average, and they end up doing this little 8-year stint, paying double what they would if they just rented. And in the first 8 years, most of what they're paying each week is interest. Remember, this is $1 million house. They're just chipping away $275 a week. The truth is, once you get onto the mortgage train and you're doing this thing every 8 years, it's literally one of the worst things you can do if you want to be financially independent. On the other hand, if you want a population to stay working and be productive members of society, the best thing you can do is get them to get a mortgage. So without getting too government conspiracy on Snapchat, that's why a lot of governments around the world have these first home buyers, grants, incentives and things. They want young people to get mortgages. Get a young 20, 30-year-old into a mortgage, you've got them for life. They'll be working for the rest of time. Chapter 3, capital growth. This is the elephant in the room right now. Even though we've established that it's much cheaper to just rent and pay the debt money, which is a smaller amount than the interest, renters don't get any capital gain if the price of the property goes up. The more financially minded listeners will have picked up on that. Don't worry, I know about it. Step 4, the Lewis-Mocker lease and rent strategy. Why is it called the Lewis-Mocker lease and rent strategy? It's because it has a pretty bloody good ring to it, is why. Did I invent this strategy? No, I didn't invent this strategy. I learned this strategy from someone who was much more successful than me. In fact, when I met him, he had around about $40 million worth of property, and he rented the house that he lived in. Here's what you do. You buy the $1 million house with a mortgage, but you lease it out. You lease it out to a tenant, and therefore you pay interest only. We elect to pay interest only on an investment property because it frees up cash flow. We can pay the principal off in other ways. How much rent would you get for this place? Well, we know it's about $750. So we're getting $750 income. The expense of interest minus your rental income is $211 a week. But because it's now an investment property, it's a business and everything's tax deductible. The interest is tax deductible, the body corp, the insurance, the land, everything. And if you've got a rockin' good accountant, you can get pretty bloody creative with these tax deductions. The phone that you're holding right now to watch this Snapchat, tax deductible as a property investor. But the big dog is depreciation. When you're a property investor with an investment property, you have a depreciation schedule drawn up and you get bulk deductions with no outgoings. And on a $1 million place like in this example, the deductions could probably easily add up to $10,000, $15,000 a year. Let's call it $200 a week. So after tax, you've got the place for $11 a week. Will there be other costs on top of that, what we've drawn up? Of course. But this is just to demonstrate the point, to convey the principle. Also, because you've leased your house out to a tenant, you're probably going to be living under a bridge. Which is why you go and rent a house for $750 a week. Remember, these are the same type of houses in the same suburb. You're paying $750 plus 11, that's $761. In fact, if you're like me and you work from home, which I think is going to be a huge thing in the next 5 years for a lot of people, a portion of this becomes tax deductible. So by structuring the whole transaction with a lease and rent strategy, we're paying $761 a week, And we own a place still. We get the capital growth. And that's $475 a week cheaper than if you just straight up go and buy the place with a mortgage. So what are you going to do with that extra cash flow, the extra $475 a week? You do whatever is most important to you. Everyone's different. You might want to save and invest. You might want to pay off the principal, like we talked about before, pay it off quicker. You might want to buy a car. Some quick numbers. In Australia, with a shuttle mortgage, you can buy approximately a $200,000 car with that weekly saving. That's what I elected to do for a short period of time. Or a really popular one is to put the extra cash flow into rent so that the place that you live in is much better. And that's because rent price doesn't go up proportionately to the bossness of a place. It kind of goes like that. In other words, as rent price goes up, a place that's twice as boss won't necessarily be twice the price. This here curve is what we call the opportunity curve, and it's present in heaps of different areas of life. When you find the curve in some kind of endeavor, whether it's business or other, there's opportunity, and you can be on the right side of that opportunity or the wrong side of it. In my business, I engage a risk management model that puts me on the right side of the curve every time. The red line is exponentially decaying downside, and the green line is exponentially growing upside. These opportunity curves, as I call them, come in different orientations and forms. These are called exponential functions, whereas this one, which is actually inverted, it's the opposite way around, is called a logarithmic function. It really doesn't matter what you call them or which way they are around, but when you find them, there is opportunity. Do your best to put yourself on the right side of that opportunity. The exponential growth curve is the basis of compounding interest, which even Einstein said was the greatest force in the universe. Car prices, for example, follow this exponentially decaying price model. They fall really fast at the start, then they plateau. Harnessing that opportunity curve with a bit of knowledge about how currencies work is how my business partner bought a Lamborghini at 22 and made money from it. There's a full breakdown of the entire transaction and exactly how much he made and how much he paid for it on this page. Go check it out. And to wrap this section up real quick, if you go and get a mortgage with an amortization graph like this, you're actually on the wrong side of that opportunity curve. Every time you sell your house and get a new one, every 8.3 years, you start a big chunk of interest at the start. The bank wins that opportunity battle. Shitbags, this is a long Snapchat. I don't know how long the snap is at the moment, but I think I've been doing this 2 hours now. And if you're still watching this and you didn't skip, kudos, that's a decent effort. Let's bring it home strong. Final chapter of the story, REITs, which of course is an acronym. It stands for Real Estate Investment Trusts. These are some next level shit. Not many people know about this. You go and ask a person on the street, I very highly doubt they've heard of a real estate investment trust before. Basically what it allows you to do is to invest in real estate without buying any real estate. Most people think that to invest in the real estate market that they have to go and buy a bloody house or a building or a bloody shop front or something. It's not true. And because people think that, they also think that they need $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, $600,000 to invest in the real estate market. Also not true. You can invest in a real estate investment trust tonight for a couple of $1,000s. Basically, these trusts go and invest in a lot of property and they're listed on the stock market, so you go and buy into them by way of just buying their stock. It's just a stock on the stock market. It's no different to buying McDonald's stock or Apple stock or Google stock. You just buy a investment trust stock. The cool thing about REITs is that all the rental income that they receive, they pass on to the shareholders as a dividend. So the dividend yield on a REIT is much higher on average than a regular stock. There's hundreds of REITs to choose from, all in different niches of the property market in different countries. Right now, these are the top 25 in order of dividend yield. And yes, that is 19%. If we cast our mind back to this arrangement, $750 a week on a $1 million property is about 3.9% yield. This is 19.7%. But for the sake of a quick example, let's choose one with a far more conservative yield. I'm quite interested in senior housing properties. As all the baby boomers are moving into retirement age, moving into aged care facilities and retirement villages, do you think there's an opportunity for senior housing properties? Because if you do, you can invest in the Senior Housing Properties REIT. The code is SNH. It's paying 10% dividend yield right now. And that is not personal investment advice. But to highlight the magnitude of that kind of dividend yield, let's talk about a hypothetical situation, and we're nearly finished. A 10% dividend yield means on a $400,000 hypothetical investment property in the form of a REIT rather than an actual property, you'll make $40K a year as a dividend, even if the stock goes sideways. That's roughly $800 a week in hypothetical rental income. In this example, we thought we were doing good to make $750 a week on a $1 million property. This is $800 on a $400K property. Where the hell can you buy a $400,000 investment property and charge $800 a week? And the absolute final thing on REITs is that you can short them. You can go short on the property market. You can bet on the property market going down. Do you think that in 2008, for example, global financial crisis, that there were some people who predicted that the arse was about to fall out of the property market? Absolutely there was. And do you think there were people who shorted the stock market during that time because they knew the stock market was about to fall over? Absolutely there was. My point is that if you have an internet connection, you have untold power at your fingertips with so many different tools and services and abilities that you probably don't even know exist. And my hope is that by making snap stories like this, I highlight some of the opportunities and tools and strategies that you have at your disposal right now. Know for a fact that if you just put a little bit of effort and energy into researching these things and finding out a better way to do life, you will have a better life. I'm so sure about what I personally teach that I'm now doing a 100% life changer guarantee. If anyone pays to become a student of mine and I can't change their life, then I don't deserve to be their teacher. They should get their money back. Fuck, I think I just went off on a big tangent. I was looping back around to saying, don't enslave yourself by listening to people with no results and no idea. 7 hours. I just saw it. That took me 7 hours to do that. I forgot to have dinner.